Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the OCVarsity Gridiron Show, Week 1 edition. I'm your host, Dan Albano, with Steve Fryer, who is off to a very fast start, 5-0, no less, last week, to already open up a two-game lead on me. I went 3-2, so keeping with that theme that I already knew I was probably in trouble at the beginning of the year. Steve, how did you go 5-0 last week?
My coin flips were better than yours.
Well, you got a lot of you're not taking the credit for it. I think you did outstanding, and congrats to you. And I got some work to do. And what I'm bringing to us this week, Mr. Fryer, I think are some games and some matchups with a lot of backstory to them, which I think it makes it really interesting because, in high school sports, one of the biggest motivating factors is always that revenge factor. And there's some revenge factor in play in some of these matchups. So want to go right to Thursday. One of the best games, arguably the best game of the week, is right on Thursday. Started off Centennial Corona coming in to Orange County to take on Santa Margarita. This game's going to be Thursday at Trabuco Hills High School. So the Eagles, their second chance to try to get that first victory for new coach Carson Palmer. Last week, Eagles had some self-inflicted wounds, and they lost to a gutsy Mission Viejo team. I think flat out Diablos, they wanted that game maybe more badly. Santa Margarita, though, just some execution, some ill-timed penalties. They had a couple, one touchdown call back by Trent Mosley, and they had another nice play by an emerging tight end, Gazanaga, that was, really down to the goal line, and that hurt them. So they lost 7-3, but Santa Margarita showed a lot of promise. Now, the thing we got to remember is last year, Santa Margarita also lost to Mission Viejo as well, but they came back the following week, beat Centennial Corona in one of the stunning scores of the entire season, 31-15. That was another Trent Mosley game, right, Steve?
Yeah.
11 catches, 212 yards, 2 TDs. He also ran for a score. So SM coming in 0-1, Centennial 1-0 after they dismantled Servite last week. Who do you got in this one?
Man, it's a tough one to pick, but I've seen some video of the Centennial-Servite game. I was impressed by Centennial. Dominic Catalano, the quarterback, he had a good game. He had a good game, and then they had some guys run the ball and all that. Their total offense was pretty wild. They ran 550 yards of total offense for Centennial. And then, and I know we're going to talk about Servite later, but, Servite, made a lot of big errors in this thing on special teams, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Servite. I'm going with Centennial this game. And now I think that, Marguerite is going to play better. I checked this out. Here's a fun a fun fact. 3 points for Margarita. In Carson Palmer's many, many games at USC, his teams never scored fewer than 6. So that's kind of a weird thing for Carson. His final year, they got shut out by the Rams in 2017 when he's playing for Arizona. But I think, Margarita's going to get better soon. They got a lot of things they got to put together. But I like Centennial this game. I think that from what I saw, that offensive line was really good. They pushed Servite dudes around. The defensive front was really strong as well. So I'm going with Centennial.
Yeah, this was also a tough game for me to call because I think, like what you just touched on, Steve. I think Santa Margarita has the physicality to play with Centennial, and I know they got the defense. Their defense is outstanding. A lot of returners back on the SM defense.
Yeah.
And but Centennial is tough to play with their pace and some of their misdirection. I'm going with Centennial as well because I just, probably the overwhelming factor is I just think that Coach Logan at Centennial this year is find a way to win this game. But it's gonna be tough to do. Be 2 Trinity League teams back to back to open the season. But of course, Santa Margarita is playing a tough schedule, but I like Centennial as well. But I think that's a great game. Hey, keeping with Thursday, Steve, and keeping with the theme, Yorba Linda coming into Huntington Beach to take on Edison. This game's going to be at Huntington Beach High School. So last year, Yorba Linda edged Edison 22-21. I believe you covered this game
I
for the
did.
Register. It was came right down to the end, maybe a little controversy. But how did the season end? Of course, for both these teams, both went on to have great season. Edison captured the Division III title. Yorba Linda went on to win to get to the Division II semi. So we
Right.
know Edison was a state champion as well, a SoCal champion, section champion. Yorba Linda made semis in a very tough division too. So Yorba Linda opened with a 41-0 win last week at SoFi against Mayfair. I took that in person, and the Mustangs really impressed me because they scored in all three phases.
Yes.
They're well rounded. They got multiple running backs, multiple receivers. Their lines get after it. Linebackers active, secondary experienced. Edison well coached as well. They got good linemen. They have multiple running backs. Maybe Yorba Linda has more skill players, which is a little interesting for me to say. Edison opened up with a 20-13 win last week against Clovis West. Chargers got up 20-0, and then they kind of had to hold on after that. But who do you got in this one, Steve?
Clovis West historically pretty good. Won a CIF Central Section Championship in 2018. Has won a bunch of them prior to that. Last year, 3-8, 0-5 in their league, which is a really good league out there in the Central Valley. And I was like you said, I was at this Edison Yorba Linda game, and there was some funky stuff at the end of the game. I kind of think maybe Edison got the short end of something there at the end of that game. But take nothing away from Yorba Linda. You got things even out during the course of a year. Things don't go your way and go your way. So it's all good. I like Edison in this game. Another close game. Sam Edmiston, the quarterback, played last year. I think he's second half of last year. I think he's getting better. I expect to see a little more offense out of Edison. Better defensive effort too than the type of defensive effort they're going to need against Yorba, Dan, because Yorba Linda is really gosh darn good. I think Coach Jeff Bailey likes his group a lot from talking to him. I'm going with Edison in a real gosh darn close game.
Yes. This was another game hard to pick, but I'm going with the Mustangs. I'm trying not to have that recency bias that I just saw them play, but I definitely took a good look at Edison in 7-on at the Edison Passing Tournament in July.
Yeah.
And I am high on a lot of their players, a lot of their linemen. I think Sam Thompson is excellent quarterback. He's got some good experience. And you mentioned the running backs. They got a committee, and I know they're going to be physical. But I do think Yorba might have just a little bit more firepower. So we'll see how this game goes. I think it's going to be outstanding. Both these teams I'm high on. Both outstanding coaches with Coach Grady, Coach Bailey. So we differ right there. All right, Steve, let's go to Friday. Three more exciting games with some backstories. So let's go to Western High School. Pioneers playing host to Villa Park. They are both 1-0. So, speaking of a little history, these teams did scrimmage before last season. I took in the documentary that they do every year by young filmmaker Victor Baltazar there with the Western program. Documentary kind of showed that Villa Park maybe kind of did better in that scrimmage. I don't think they were too happy with that performance in that scrimmage. Well, now they're hooking up for the real thing. And speaking of some drama, last week, Steve, Western opened, I think, an under the radar type game. They beat Salesian 34-31 on the final play of the game, and that was Chance Thomas throwing a touchdown pass to Jonathan Hardy. So Salesian was a little bit under the radar. They were D8 semifinalists last year, lost to the eventual champion in Pius Matthias. And then speaking of dramatics, last week you got Villa Park edging Carson 26-22 on a late sneak, like 42 seconds left by quarterback Vinny Lagata, who's kind of emerged. Villa Park's also had a transfer quarterback from Loyola show up, but he was ruled as a sit-out period. But I watched some of the highlights of this one. and Vinny really impressed me with his tenacity. Guys running hard,
Yeah,
playing hard, and I saw some pretty big kids on the field for Carson. That was a physical game, so that was a nice win for what Villa Park that's totally trying to reload. Who do you got in this one?
I'm going with Western in this one. I think you're going to see a really good game out of Chance Thomas, the quarterback over there at Western. Really young guy with a ton of potential over there. Villa Park has played a lot of sophomores in key positions, and that might be kind of tough to do against a team with the athletes that Western has. So, Vinny Legata, rushed for 100 plus yards. I know they had a big quarterback battle over there at VP. But again, young all over the place. Western playing on their home field too. Here, they're both in our top 25.
Yeah,
tied at number 15. So I think that's going to give an example of the kind of fun game we're going to have. But my pick is the Pioneers of Western.
yes, and you were covering this game for the Register, right? Okay,
I am, sir.
and we didn't mention earlier, Steve, you're also covering the Corona Centennial-Santa Margarita game.
That is correct.
All right. So in this game, I'm also going with Western. So we agree. I think the Pioneers 2-0 got maybe a little bit more experience, and I agree with you that Chance Thomas Jr. could be a difference maker in this game. But I think Villa Park, Coach Sanchez has got those guys playing hard, and I think they'll have some confidence and probably draw upon maybe some of that history of that scrimmage last year. All right, Steve, let's go. On Friday, another fabulous game here. Huntington Beach at Trabuco Hills. So great quarterback matchup for Huntington Beach. You got Brady Edmonds, Jr. committed to Ohio State, and then Trabuco Hills counters with Tristan Zale, hungry senior. I had both these guys, both these quarterbacks in our top 10, passers to watch preseason. I had Brady Edmonds at 4, and I had Tristan Zale at 8. So 2 top 10 quarterbacks in the county. So last year, Trabuco beat Huntington Beach, surprised me, 42 to 38. That was a victory for the Mustangs. Both quarterbacks, Edmonds and Zale, they were well over 300 yards. And a guy who had a big game was Ryan Lucy, who was not, he was a Trabuco Hills receiver. He was a senior last year. He had 12 catches for 175 yards. He's graduated, but Trabuco still has running back Landon Pompey, who had 100 yards, just over 100 yards rushing in that game. He's still back, and he's a dangerous, 1,000-yard rusher. So it's an interesting game because, as well, besides all that, the backstory, you got the coaching matchup. Oilers led by first-year coach Matthew Hatchie, who is got NFL experience as well, just like Carson Palmer, and then Trabuco gets a good job, always from Mark Nolan, and this is the Mustangs, season opener. So they got to watch, veteran coach like Coach Nolan. They get to watch Huntington Beach open up against Orange last week, where maybe some people are wondering about, hey, how are the Oilers looking when they're playing Orange and they're only up 14-6 at halftime. They went on to win 35-18. I know you covered that game for the Register.
Yes.
Who do you got in this one, Steve?
Huntington Beach. I think playing that game gives you an edge. You've got it. You've played it under the lights. You got a lot of things done. So that game, that Huntington Beach Orange game, I know Edmonds was all county first team for us last year.
Yes,
first or second, first team.
First team.
Yeah, and so in the first couple series, I didn't see him play last year. So the first couple series, I'm kind of going, wait a minute, this is the all county guy. Kind of looks a little normal. And then second half, Edmonds starts doing his thing. Okay. Now I see what everybody loves about this guy. He was really good. I like that. That guy can throw it. He's a big guy, and he's really good. Got some good Troy Foster. And then one of the best players, in the county this season is going to be Steele Kurtz over at Huntington Beach. He does everything, punt return, kick return, is the kicker, is the punter, is a really good receiver, all around great athlete. So that guy's a difference maker. And I think with Edmonton getting the ball to both those guys, you're gonna see their offense start better and stronger than it did against Orange. I'm going Huntington Beach in this game.
Yes, I am also picking the Oilers. I think a lot because of that revenge factor. I know how competitive guys like Brady and those other guys that you rattled off. I know how competitive the Oilers are, and I think they might have a little bit more experience back. But I know they're going to get tested by that Trabuco Hills offense. So, but I like the Oilers to go to 2-0 under Coach Hatchett. All right, so let's close out with maybe the game of the week. I think it's a big spot for one of Orange County's top teams, and that's Servite. So on Friday, Steve, they play host to Murrieta Valley. This game's going to be at Mount Sac. So, last year I covered this game. I'm covering it again.
Yeah.
I went all the way out last year to Murrieta because I was hoping to catch a little Bear Bachmeyer play for Murrieta Valley. He didn't play in that game, number 47. Now he's going to start this weekend as the first, true freshman to start at BYU in the history of that program. They take on Portland State. So, but I digress to say, hey, last year Servite they won that game with no Bear Bachmeyer 37-17. That was a Quade Carr show. But I think this is a big spot for the Friars because last week in losing to Centennial, very lopsided, they gave up 550 yards of offense.
Yes.
Yes, that's Centennial, but that's a lot of yards. That's
Yeah.
just a lot of yards. So you start to wonder about where the Friars' defense is. Are there defensive concerns where there are some positive. There's a lot of experience in guys back, and they have I think one of the best linebacking crews in Orange County. But you wonder about that defense. But hey, maybe that's just Centennial. And then you got to look at the passing game. Can the Friars get maybe stretch the field, get more of a long, more yardage going? Cale Murphy in his first start, he had about 100, a little bit over, 125 yards, but he was averaging, his yards per completions wasn't too high.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of short passing game yards racked up, and they didn't run the ball that well. So you wonder, you know, can the Friars take that step? From game one to game two, which can be you can make substantial gains. I think this is a spot for the Friars where they didn't really light it up during the summer. Then they in summer passing league, then they open up with a pretty lopsided loss. Can they get back on track now with a quality win? Because Murrieta Valley, which is 1-0 and probably this in the second rated team out in the Inland Empire behind Centennial Corona,
Hmm.
this would be a really good way to get back on track for the Friars. And oh, by the way, Steve, the Friars play Chaminade next week, who's kind of one of the surprise teams of week 0 with a win over Oaks Christian. So
Yeah.
I think this is a big one for Servite to get, but it will not be easy. Who do you got in this one?
Um, Murrieta Valley, I'm going with on this game.
Okay. Wow.
Beat a pretty good Rancho Cucamonga team last week, 28-26. What I saw last week from Servite, man, they did everything that could go wrong was wrong. Special teams errors, right? Gave Centennial a short field. Pass coverage deficiencies. Guys were open all over the place for Centennial. They couldn't move the ball on offense. Guys were getting pushed around wearing the Servite all white uniforms last week. If they play like that again, they're going to have a hard time against Murrieta Valley, who, like you mentioned, probably the number 2 team in the IE in the Inland Empire. So, Servite's got the potential to get better, but I think Murrieta Valley is going to win this game, Dan.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking that I'm picking the Friars to bounce back.
Yeah.
They might not. I'm banking a lot of that on. I think Centennial is really good. I picked them to beat
Yes.
Santa Margarita, just like you did as well. But I think Friars, they got a lot of talent. They got that injection of speed with
Yeah.
Benjamin Harris. I think they'll start to figure out some stuff and get. They got to get Luke Sorensen the ball more. He
Yeah.
only had
One
one
catch
catch,
last week, right?
right? Does a lot. He's a blocker.
Yeah, I know.
He's blocker as well, but he's a talented pass catcher. Saw
Yeah.
him at the Edison passing tournament. We know what kind of potential he has. So I think there's some quick adjustments, especially defensively. I think Servite's going to have to clean it up. So they're playing a challenging schedule. They really tested themselves last week, but they got to get back on track. So,
For
hey,
sure.
just like last week, Steve, we differ on two games.
Okay.
That could be bad news for me. I could be falling behind very quickly early in the season to you.
Or you could be caught up to me. By the way,
Market,
Dan, you asked about how I went 5-0. Don't pick against the rankings. I learned that the hard way. So, we've got Edison ranked ahead of Yorba Linda, and you picked Yorba Linda over Edison.
yes,
And I saw your vote. So
I know.
you're sort of picking against yourself in a way. But I've learned the hard way, don't pick against the rankings. So
Yeah.
here I am.
I like to have fun. I like to see. I think that's how I rate this week, and I like to forecast. And I think some different things are going to happen.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
hey,
High school kids. It's high school kids.
you know,
We don't know what we're going to get. The coaches don't know. You always talk to a coach before the game. Hey, man, how's it going? What do you think? Hey, ask me ask me an hour and a half. I'll tell you.
yeah,
You could have a great week with high school kids. You can have a great week of practice, and then the kids play terribly. A terrible week of practice, and the kids play great. So you just don't know what you're going to get with these kids, man. These coaches who somehow get consistency out of their team week after week after week, whatever the sport it is in high school athletics, the coaches can get that out. Those dudes, those women coaching, magicians. I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know how you ladies who coach do it. It's amazing to me. Always impressed by how our coaches work these kids and get them to play consistent.
oh yeah,
With so much going on in their lives.
yes. We are rich in coaching resources, and yeah. Coach Grady, Bailey, at Yorba Linda, two of the best coaches around. So that's going to be
Yeah.
a great game, and there's a lot of these games are going to be awesome for this second week of the season. It's a really good week, and we roll on, and the season is going to start flying past us here as
Yeah.
we already are in the second week of the seasons.
And Carson Palmer, just so second week of coaching, it's going to be different, right? Matt
Yeah,
Reiner over at Servite. The guy's pretty smart. The guy knows his stuff. He knows how to rev the dudes up. You mentioned Bailey and Grady, two of the best in the business over there. Villa Park, Dushan Ansich, he's got it going. Dan Davidson, that guy's offensive whiz kid. We got some people who can coach this game.
yes. And of course, we mentioned Coach Matt Logan coming into
Yep.
Orange County. We've seen him come in all these big games against Mater Day, and
Yeah.
they play Mission Viejo in some classic games
Yeah, you
recently.
mentioned
So,
Mark Nolan, Trabuco, Matthew Hatchett, NFL guy of a bunch of years, was coaching. And, I watched his staff work with young people last week. He's got a good coaching staff over there. It was interesting. Anyway,
all right. So for Steve Fryer, I'm Dan Albano. Thanks again for watching the OC Gridiron Show.